A very good evening to you all. I am Meenakshi Sundaram and I have been a professor of English for about 38 years, and I have also been a practicing astrologer for 38 plus years. And in my trying to straddle both these professions together, I was able to interact with students of, between the age groups of, let's say, between the ages of 18 and 25. And I was also able to interact with a lot of adults who had their own way of thinking and who had problems of their own. And often those problems would be about that very age group which I was handling on an everyday basis, since I was teaching students of, college going students. And that's the reason I was able to understand the gap between these two mindsets, and standing in that gap, I knew exactly what needed to be done in order to somehow integrate these two, the parental mindset and the young adult mindset. So I'd like to tell you a little bit about myself and how from being a college teacher, I went on to become an astrologer. They both started at the same time, more or less. And then, having practiced astrology for so many years, what exactly it was that drove me to look for something that could help me transcend astrology and to look for solutions over and above astrology. So, how did all that happen? You see, I've grown up in a Tambram family, and I have been hearing astrology, the precepts of astrology, let's say a lot about philosophy, and not necessarily Indian philosophy. I have also I got to hear a lot about Western philosophy and things like that, and that kind of a thing was my staple diet. And so in my later years, somehow those seeds that had been sown in me in very early years, they were bound to take root, and they were bound to shoot up and then to show up in my life outside. So I kept doing this astrology for many, many years. As I told you, now it's almost 37, 38 years. But about, let's say 10 years back, 10 or 12 years back, I went through a phase where I actively questioned myself. I actively questioned myself because people would approach me. I had become very good at my subject. And people would approach me, and whatever I had to say about their charts, somehow it would just come to pass. And when they would approach me, they would come to me with a lot of hope. They expected me to say something nice, something pleasant. There were all kinds of fears in their minds, and they wanted some sane advice from a person whom they trusted very much, and they hoped to get to hear something that would relieve their minds of all those tensions and fears, and then they could hang on to whatever it is that I had to say, some pleasant thing that I had to say. But the subject of astrology being whatever it is based on certain precepts, on certain principles. And yes, those principles, those precepts are all absolutely scientific, but their application is a matter of art. But as you keep doing these readings and you keep interacting with the minds of others, what you're actually doing is you're reading their subconscious mind. Knowingly or unknowingly, you're looking at a chart, no doubt, but that chart is a reflection of what is going on in their subconscious minds. And so what is going on in that subconscious mind of theirs is showing up as some problem area in the chart. And now as an astrologer, you are expected to help them override that dark patch, something that you can give them to help them circumvent all that. Now that's not always easy, because some areas appear so dark that you just cannot say whatever fancy thing you feel like saying, much as you would like to comfort them or to give them something that they'd like to hear. And if you say it from a place of conviction and they are able to hold on to it with faith, then that thing itself will come to pass. That is something that I tested, I experimented, and I found that it was exactly that. On many occasions, I wouldn't look at people's charts. They'd come to me with the problem, and even without looking at the chart, I'd say something with conviction. I'd ask them to do something, and the place from which I spoke was a place of conviction. And the place from which they received was a place of great faith. And when these two things came together, what would happen is that those powerful words that I spoke with so much conviction actually came to pass. There was no chart involved, there was no horoscope involved, there were no readings involved, and somehow surprisingly, people didn't ask me, why aren't you even looking into the chart? Why are you just asking us to do something? At least take a look at the chart. The faith that these people had, the belief that they had, let's call it belief. It was the belief in their minds which made them accept blindly whatever it is that I was telling them. And they went away with that faith. They did whatever they were asked to do. And somehow, whatever problem it was, it got resolved. I realized that at any point in time, it is either my higher mind which is coming into play, even in the role of that astrologer, where I'm overlooking many things that the chart is saying, and I'm able to say something with great conviction, and somehow that comes to pass. But that is not something that can be done in each and every case, because the state of mind that we ourselves are in doesn't allow for that kind of prophesying or predicting or whatever you'd like to call it. And so it became very difficult for me. I no longer wanted to look at people's charts. I didn't want to look at all those dark places. I just started telling people whatever. I spoke what was God's truth. I spoke what was God's truth, and I just let it go. Beyond that, I would not, say anything or think about it or anything. It was as if I had said something that was God's truth, and now I was leaving it to God to make that happen, because truth always prevails. And I didn't want to look at all these dark places in the chart and whatever lies the human mind, thinks up of, constructs, all the stories that we build in our own minds. I didn't want to look at any of those. And I found a great sense of relief every time I found that, things came to pass, even if I didn't actually look into the chart. That was the beginning of a journey for me. And when I began that journey, it's not that, I did it behind people's backs. All my clients would come to me, they would be sitting in front of me, and without even looking into that chart, I would say something. So it's not as if, I was charging them a fee and I was doing these things behind their backs. I was not doing any of that stuff. So it gave me a great sense of confidence, because I have always known that life is not what it appears to be. And it is not that if a person is born with a chart which indicates a lot of problems, it's not as if those problems cannot be overcome. That is somehow not God's truth. And man is not so powerless. That was very clear to me. From there, I started studying all kinds of other things. I studied psychology. In addition to everything that I knew about astrology and philosophy, I studied psychology, and the three somehow came together. Astrology, philosophy, and psychology came together, and I found that this could give me a very clear idea of how life actually works. Each one of us is like that pen drive. You can't look at a pen drive from the outside and say what all it contains. You cannot say what data the pen drive contains just by taking a look at it out from the outside. You need a device with a screen, and you'll have to insert that pen drive. You'll have to run the internet, the electricity, whatever, and then the contents of that pen drive will flash onto the screen outside. All the while, the screen is showing all that, but the contents are all the while in the pen drive. They are not on the screen. They don't belong to the screen. They are showing up on the screen. Excuse me. So now I was able to understand that every human being who's born is like the computer or a laptop or a mobile or some device with a screen. This is the screen. And the pen drive is the mind. And the first breath we take, so the internet is on, electricity is on, whatever, and we get to see the contents of our own mind on the screens outside. Those screens are always others. They are people very close to us. They are our loved ones. They are the ones we hate. They are people whom we have an intense dislike for. They are people whom we are so deeply attached to, but they all are screens. And they all are screens for the contents of our own mind. So this was something that I understood very deeply, and I started taking responsibility for every single thing that I saw on somebody else and which had the power to disturb me in the least. And the result was that I started practicing a chant which is known as the Ho'oponopono chant. It's a Hawaiian chant, very easily available on Google, but it's a magical, miraculous chant, and it was so appealing to me because I have grown up in the non-dual Advaita tradition. That's what I have been hearing right from childhood, and this was somehow it was complementing it. And so these two things came together, and I was able to train my own mind into 100% responsibility. I took 100% responsibility for every single thing that I saw or heard outside, no matter I liked it or I disliked it. I treated every single human being as only feedback and nothing else. And once I reached that level, it was very easy for me to, come to that place where I could help others do the same. And I found people's lives changing. They came to me with all kinds of problems, but once they were on that track, once they got down to taking 100% responsibility and realizing that those nasty things that they said other people were saying about them, they were able to realize, okay, this nasty comment is something that I am making about myself at a deep unconscious level, and I'm not aware of it. So this was something which was very, very helpful for me in bringing other people to a place of complete peace. I experienced that peace for myself first, and now I've been able to help a lot of people